Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross from PTCGRadio, and I'm back with another deck breakdown. But this is a deck breakdown with a difference. This is a new segment I'm going to be trying to start up on my YouTube channel, where I take winning lists and I show them to you in all of their glory, and we have a look through them, and I tell you honestly what I think about the list, why they've made the decisions that they have, etc. Now, I am, for the time being, only going to be using winning lists, although if I see lists I particularly like, I might use them as well. And similarly, I'm only going to be using confirmed lists, not lists which I've seen the rough outline of the deck and made some assumptions or guesses about. So, what you see before you is the list that won Malaysian Nationals this past weekend. And truth be told, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a huge fan of this list, but let's have a look. It looks like a very interesting list. A couple things to point out first of all. This tool scrapper here was actually a startling megaphone. Somehow, and I have no idea how this happened, I have no startling megaphone on PTCGO. Personally, I'm actually a fan of tool scrapper as a side note, because unless you come up against a tool drop, the chances of wanting to discard more than two of your opponent's tools are minimal, and a lot of the time people are playing a combination of Floatstone and Muscle Band in their own deck, and what you have then is the opportunity to switch your tools around. When I play Virgin, I like to play Tool Scrapper, so if I've got a Muscle Band on my Genesect, I can get rid of it and stick a G-Booster on. Or if I end up putting a Floatstone on a Deoxys, for instance, I can get rid of that and put a Muscle Band on to do that extra 20 damage. Although, for reasons I've outlined previously, I don't like it in Plasma. And although you can't see the counts down here, there are 3 Muscle Band, 8 Dark Energy, 2 Fighting Energy, and 4 double colourless energy. If you don't believe me, there is confirmation of the double colourless energy and all the others, and if we flick to trainers very quickly, we can see a confirmation that there are 3 Muscle Band in this particular deck. So, back to the expanded view so you can see a little bit of everything with my jerky computer. So, this is your classic Evil Tau list, except it's not. Let's look at the standard things first of all. The standard things are, we've got Evil Tau. Although there's only 2, and that is lower, most decks go for at least 3, because you want to be, if your opponent knocks out 2 Evil Tau, then they've still got 2 prizes left to take, but you're then out of Evil Tau, especially as there is 0 recovery cards in this deck. The other thing is there is a Raichu line which is much fatter than your average Raichu line. It's generally the done deal that you will go for a 2-2 Raichu line if you're playing an Eviltau deck, and that's not the case here. They're playing a 3-3. Obviously, in any kind of Eviltau mirror, whether they're playing Raichu or not, this is going to give you an inherent advantage. So if you can find room for a 3-3 Raichu list, that's pretty darn good indeed. There's a Jirachi in there, and the Jirachi is a good card with some qualifications. I like Jirachi a lot. It has an ability called Stellar Guidance, which Stardust Song was the old Rising Rivals one where it got knocked out from damage and you got to go and get any card in your deck. But this is a new Jirachi EX. I say newish. It's got Stellar Guidance, and it allows you to bench it and use its ability to draw a supporter card. Now, there's reasons to like this, and that is, first of all, it's a consistency boost. You'll see in this list here that there is a level ball, and that also there are 3 ultra ball. And any of them can be a supporter if you use it to find your Jirachi. Similarly, there's a 1 of Lasand in here, and that means that you can use Jirachi or any of the 4 aforementioned balls to search for your Lasand, so you've got that Lasand ready when you need it. Sorry to any French people listening for my pronunciation of Lasandre. I asked some French teachers at school, and that was what they told me, and this is my best approximation thereof. And of course, you've got N, and you've got Chorus, and you've also got Juniper here, so this allows you to really search for what supporter you like. I personally, and there are some very, very good players who have disagreed with me here, so I cannot say I'm right, but I personally don't like Jirachi, and there are 2 major reasons for this. Reason number 1, it's got 90 HP, it's fragile, a lot of people are playing Lasand. That is 2 free prizes. Now, obviously, there's the old argument that, but if they're killing my Jirachi, they're not killing the active, so I don't mind them taking those 2 prizes. But they're not going to be taking the Jirachi prizes mid-game. The Jirachi is going to be the last 2 prizes. and they're going to be easy prizes to get. There's no Scoop Up Cyclone here, no Cassius, so once that Jirachi's benched, that Jirachi is staying there, and it's 2 prizes on the bench for whenever. But the other reason I've gone off Jirachi, and bearing in mind I played Jirachi in my Flareon list for all of last season, well, all of, that I played Flareon in, and Garbodor is a big, big problem. It's a huge problem. Because as soon as Garbodor goes down, that Jirachi becomes a dead card, and all the advantages I've just listed are no longer there. So starting off with the trainers, let's have a quick look at energy. No, let's actually have a look at Landorus, because we haven't seen Landorus yet. He is the big striking standout here, and I left him till last because he is the most interesting. I say last, there's obviously a Bouffalont there. Just to very quickly look at Bouffalont, Bouffalant's fairly standard. Best thing about Bouffalont is Gold Breaker. Does 122 in EX, you stick a muscle band on, that's 140, you play a laser with Verbank City Gym down, that goes up to 170. And that's a one-hit KO on things like Genesect or Virizion, although do bear in mind they'll probably have Grass Energy to stop the poison damage. It's a one-hit KO on Caldeo, on Eviltau, on Thunderous, I could keep going. A lot of Pokemon have 170 HP. There's still ones like Black Kyurem EX and like Darkrai, etc., that have only got 180 HP, which will survive a Gold Breaker, but with a paltry 10 HP left. And I suppose before we get to Landorus, we could also mention the 2 Darkrai. Now, Darkrai is a well-played Pokemon in these kind of decks. Usually, it's dropped nowadays, or at least it's often dropped, when the player is playing Garbodor, because it shuts off that brilliant Dark Cloak ability. But without Garbodor, Dark Cloak is brilliant. It allows you to retreat your Pokemon for free if it's got a Dark Energy attached, which it largely is going to. And if we look at something like Landorus with its retreat cost of 3, that is a huge advantage if it gets poisoned, because there's one switch in this deck, but there's no other switching cards to speak of. So, why is Landorus in the deck? There are 2 main reasons why it's in the deck. First of all, Darkrai. If your opponent is not playing Garbodor in their list, and sometimes if they are, I'm talking about mirror matches of course, they're going to be playing Darkrai. Darkrai has a weakness to fighting, Hammerhead with a muscle band does 100, and of course 30 to the bench, and you can add to that with poison. Landorus is really, really good against Darkrai. I played for a large amount of not the season gone, but the season before, a Landorus Cabalion stuff deck, and I didn't lose to Darkrai, ever. And that was pre-Muscle Band, because Landorus is just too good against Darkrai. Even without Muscle Band, you do Hammerhead for 60, Poison adds 30 to put it up to 90, comes back into your turn with 120 total, and Hammerhead finishes it off. Now, of course, they can retreat it to get rid of the poison, but then they've got to find something else with which to attack. The other reason Landorus and Hammerhead are so good is Raichu. Raichu has 90 HP and a weakness to fighting, which means with a Muscle Band it's a one-hit KO. Pikachu has 60 HP and a weakness to fighting, meaning it's a one-hit KO without Muscle Band, or a two-hit KO on the bench. If they evolve into Raichu, it turns into a 3-hit KO on the bench, as you're doing 30 a turn to the bench. And a lot of Eviltau lists are not playing Mr. Mime at the moment to block that bench damage. So essentially, this person has started off with a classic, and I haven't spoken to the person, I've seen a Facebook post where there's a load of people talking about the deck, including the person who made it, but I haven't had a good chat to them about all the ins and outs of the deck. So what they've basically done is they've started with an Eviltau Raichu deck, and they've said, what are my biggest problems going to be here? Well, the mirror. Clearly Malaysia is an Eviltau heavy format, an Eviltau heavy metagame. So Landorus helps against Darkrai, it helps against Raichu. It means if your opponent brings out Raichu to beat you in the mirror, you bring out Landorus to beat them, as well as having a free Raichu line in order to beat them in the mirror. So you've got Raichu to beat the mirror, and you've got Landorus to beat the person that's tech to beat you in the mirror. So the Pokemon lineup, you can argue that 2 Eviltau is too low, you can argue that Jirachi is a liability, but honestly, the Pokemon lineup looks quite good. Now, the weird thing about this potentially is that we have so many Pokemon, so many good Pokemon. And that, of course, leads me to ask, where did all this room come from? And the main place this room came from is the supporter line. And this is my biggest problem with this deck. 4N, 4 Juniper, 2 Colress. That's it. 10 supporters. No random receiver, no Bicycle, no Skylar, no Shauna. 10 supporters, and that's all. Now, this is not a consistent deck. This is a deck which is going to draw dead. Now, the person was questioned on this on the Facebook post, and they said they drew dead in one of their 6 Swiss rounds, which shouldn't be happening. Not 1 in 6, unless you get very unlucky. And again, in top 8. So out of 9 rounds, there were 2 games where they drew dead. Now, assuming best of 3, that means that in about a quarter of your best of 3 games, you're going to lose a game because you've drawn completely dead. That's not really very good. Now, there is an illusion of consistency here, and I say illusion because I don't buy it. First things first, there is computer search. If you're going for pure out-of-the-gate consistency for your ace spec, you cannot beat computer search. Discard 2 cards, search for any card, boom, it's right there, absolutely sorted. That's very nice. You've also got, as previously mentioned, Jirachi, who allows you to search for one of those 10 supporters. And, of course, we've got a level ball and free ultra ball to allow you to search for Jirachi. This does not give you 16 supporters, 4 balls Jirachi computer search. It gives you potentially 16 outs to a supporter on turn 1. Now, when I played Jirachi in my Flareon list, I had, including Tropical Beach, 15 supporters, plus computer search, plus Jirachi, plus my Ultra Balls, to give me somewhere along the lines of 21 outs to a supporter on turn 1. And the reason for this was very, very simple. Jirachi is not that great, because it can be prized. And if Jirachi is prized, all of those level and Ultra Balls don't get you a supporter. If you don't draw it early, and you're playing against a Garbodor deck, then come mid-game, this is going to be absolutely useless to you. It's not a mid-game refresher in the same way an actual supporter would be, because if the opponent's got a Garbodor down, you're not going to be able to use Jirachi. And that is why I'm not a fan of this deck. Now, I need to point out very, very clearly here, I went something like 4-3-1 with a terrible Virizion Genesect list at my Nationals, although, to be fair, I was only playing that to try and prove to Ollie Barnum that the deck took no skill. 50-50, it does take some skill. Although I still did good, considering I'd never played it before. I literally borrowed the cards on the day. Anyway, that's a story for another day. And this person did win Malaysian Nationals with this exact list. So I cannot argue with their results. I'm giving you my honest opinion of their deck, and if you disagree with me, please, please, please leave a comment below. I do try and make a point to reply to all of my comments. So, here's what we have. Good Pokemon, bad supporters. Running through the rest of the deck, this shouldn't take too long. 4 laser and 2 Verbank is absolutely standard. Those lasers are key to any Evil Tau list. 1 Professor's Letter is absolutely standard. It allows you to search out 2 Dark Energy and then discard them with Ultra Ball or Juniper, etc. to Dark Patch them on later. Having 4 balls in total is fairly standard. The 1 level ball might stand out a little bit, but when you've got Jirachi and a free Raichu line, all of which can be grabbed with level ball, it starts to make a little bit more sense, so I can see why they played the 1 level ball there. The 1 Startling Megaphone is to stop your opponent shutting off Stellar Guidance and Dark Cloak if they get a Garbodor out, but in order to use Jirachi there, you have to Startling Megaphone and Jirachi on the same turn, and you're only playing 1 of each, and I don't know how often you're going to be able to pull that off. And then the rest of the deck should be fairly standard, but it's not. A single switch, this does make sense. It combos nicely with Dark Cloak, in that you can free retreat with Dark Cloak, and then switch your active back in. Or indeed, switch to something, say you've got Landorus active and it's poisoned, you can switch to a Darkrai and free retreat with Dark Cloak, or even switch to a Raichu and free retreat back into Landorus. So it does make sense from that point of view. As a one-off, I buy that. There are 3 other trainers, I believe, that I haven't talked about here. Oh, there's free Muscle Band. 3 is fairly standard. I'm a fan of 4, to be honest with you, as you've seen in my TDK deck, but you can't argue with 3. The other ones leave me scratching my head, though. A single Pokemon catcher. Now remember, this is a pre-errated version. The errated version has a coin flip, which means once a game you can flip a coin and maybe drag them active. There's no Sableye to reuse this. There's no dowsing machine to reuse this. It's literally 1 shot per game. And if you flip tails, it's entirely useless. If you're only playing 10 draw supporters, then there's going to be a lot of turns you don't have a supporter. You can afford to be playing 2 Lassons. So there's a change that I would make. Finally, we have free Dark Patch, which I can see, but Dark Patch is so good. And Evil Tao gets to such big damage output so quickly, I really would try and find a space for a 4th if I possibly could. But the thing that really leaves me scratching my head here is 1 Energy Switch. Now, the Garbodor version often drops Energy Switch, and I can see why they drop Energy Switch. Because they're playing a slower deck, and they're generally not retreating with Darkrai and then Energy Switching it back. So they can, leave something active, put a Float Stone on it, because the Garbodor list is generally playing a load of Float Stones, and then they can, pop a Float Stone on their active, retreat, Dark Patch onto the bench, and then retreat, so they don't have to do the attach, retreat, Energy Switch combination. But this deck does. The 1 switch kind of makes up that role, but not really. And 1 Energy Switch, especially with no Dowsing Machine or Sableye, is going to come back to haunt you here. So, I, reiterate here, I didn't do spectacularly at my Nationals, and this did win Malaysian Nationals. But, to summarise, Pokemon, really, really good, although Jirachi's a liability and I'd like a second Evil Tao. Energy line, brilliant. There is a lot of energy, 14 energy, which is huge for an Evil Tao list. But, it makes sense. All those Pokemon and energy have got to come from somewhere, and it's actually come at what looks like the expense of consistency. 10 draw supporters is a little bit too low. I'd like a 4th Dark Patch, and 1 Energy Switch in a non-Garbodor Evil Tao list, to me, is just a little bit too low. That 1 catcher seems out of place, that 1 switch seems out of place, and the 1 startling Megaphone is good, but I don't know how much you're going to do really with just 1. That's my 2 cents worth, ladies and gentlemen. Feel free to disagree, stick some comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure you give it a like, make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let me know you enjoy this. If people like these winning deck breakdowns, then I will continue to do them every time I see a winning list posted on Facebook or any of the multiple Pokemon websites. If people don't like these winning deck breakdowns, let me know, and I shall not waste my valuable time setting them up for you. Thank you very much for watching. As always, my name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.